Thank you, Tricia, and thank you, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here. We're going to skim through some slides very quickly just to set the stage for the question time, which, as I understand it, is the main reason for coming along today, so you can drill into anything you want to know about Victoria. So we'll talk about a brief snapshot of the university, a brief update on our strategic plan and where we think we should be heading in the next few years, and then just over to discussions about how your university might engage better with the community in Wellington. Currently, Vic has over 21,000 students. About 3,000 of those are international students. We have close to 900 academic staff. We're doing quite well in terms of our academic quality, first ranked of New Zealand universities in terms of research quality through the Performance-Based Research Fund, which is a government-sponsored assessment of the individual research merit of every academic staff member in the country. In terms of international rankings, we rank well within the top 300 of the world's 7,000 universities, and in some of our traditional areas of strength, such as the law, where we rank well within the top 50, humanities, around about 60 to 90, depending on the year and depending on the ranking agency, and in the highest of our sciences is the earth sciences, being marine, climate sciences, those sort of things within the top 150. Victoria Business School is one of a few business schools in the world that has what's referred to as the Triple Crown of Commerce accreditations. There's only about 55 schools internationally that have this accreditation, and that's accreditation by the European authorities, accreditation by the American authorities, and also accreditation of the NBA, so that's the Triple Crown. We also offer a wide range of extracurricular experiences, which is one of the things that Victoria is distinguished by internationally. And it's also one of the things that links the university and the city and the region. Just some examples of those. We've recently launched a BA internship program, which has taken students out of the BA program and put them in the workforce for a summer internship. Been a very successful program both for the employer and for the student. The Victoria Plus and Victoria International programs are world-leading programs that are being mimicked around the world now, and they expose our students to community leadership tasks in Victoria Plus and international leadership in the Victoria International Leadership Program. There's a range of entrepreneurship clubs as well, boot camps in particular, where we try and develop the creative and entrepreneurial skills of our students outside the curriculum. This is an important focus for us and one that we're going to continue to build on. We're very much into expansion mode at the moment in terms of our buildings, so you'll see student hostels cropping up around the terrace. Those are public-private partnerships, the way we work those. We've also just completed, under Pat Walsh's leadership, the development of the Student Hub at Kelburn, which is the picture on your right. This is a great space for students to come together and get out of the not so infrequent Wellington southerly while having a cup of coffee and enjoying one another's company. It's integrated with the library, so it's integrated with the study space as well. Two new big developments underway. One is a redevelopment of the Pipitiya campus, and particularly the Rutherford House building. We'll be expanding that to create a student and social hub on the ground floor of that, along with new teaching spaces as part of our engagement with the city. We're also building a $100 million biology building on the Kelburn campus, which is the picture on your right-hand side, and that groundbreaking ceremony is in a few weeks' time. So these are examples of developing the infrastructure of the university and make sure that it's world-class and can retain top staff and top students. Our vision is to be a world-leading capital city university and one of the great global civic universities. And what I mean by that is not a university that happens to be in a capital city, but a university that lives and breathes its capital city location, and it gets engaged with all elements of what that capital city dimension brings to a city and brings to a university. It doesn't mean just a Wellington-centric focus, because capital cities are much more focused nationally and around the world, in particular for us around the Asia-Pacific region, rather than just their own city. And global civic is a useful phrase. If I whip back through university history, you'll find about 300 or 400 years ago, universities began to withdraw from their communities. This was in a period where universities felt it was important to withdraw from religious influences, from political influences, from the influence of commerce, and to work very hard on the universal truths that were common to all men, all communities, all cultures. And that was true of the so-called ancient universities right up until quite recent times in university history, around about 125 years ago. And by that stage, communities were beginning to realise their economic and cultural and social development could be markedly enhanced by having active engagement with a good quality university. So in England, the red brick university era began, and we ended up with universities like Bristol and Manchester developing in industrial cities and championing the idea of a civic university. A university was very much engaged in its community that got involved with the social, cultural and economic development of the city. Now over time, of course that was when Victoria University was born around about 117 years ago, and over time that concept has begun to move, whereby top quality universities aren't just involved with one city. They measure themselves on the international stage. They link the global to the local and the local to the global. And so we've coined this term a global civic university, which begs the question, what is our community? We've worked through and tried to define that, and for us it is Wellington, including the Wellington region, it is New Zealand, and it is the wider Asia Pacific in particular where our emphasis will be, because that's the area that sustains the university, that's the area that sustains this country, that's where the bulk of our trade comes from, that's where the bulk of our students come from. Now I won't dwell on these slides, but to get to this point we've worked through a range of primary strategies, some enabling strategies, and I'll just pick a few of them up just to really stimulate some questions. The first is the decision to adopt a distinctive academic emphasis, which isn't an easy thing to do when you're leading any organisation, because if you try and take a focus, there's a risk of dropping some of your people out of that future vision. So what we've ended up doing is settling on a set of multidisciplinary themes which run across the university and provide an academic emphasis across the university. Not to say we won't be comprehensive in our coverage. We are now, largely with the main exception of the medical school, but to say that we can't be good at all things on the world stage and we need to have some focus. I'll come back to that in a moment. Not surprisingly, we're interested in further enhancing our research quality, but also our quantity and impact, and this is code in university circles for adding applied research that's of relevance to the economic development of this region to the very good quality, curiosity-led and fundamental research that Victoria is already well known for. Our teaching experience, we're after a holistic learning, teaching and student experience is second to none. Now this is important because this involves this community. Our students need to be valued by the entire community of Wellington if Victoria is going to be successful. So it's about how our students are valued in this community as well as the learning and teaching experience they receive at Vic. You'll see us kick off in a few weeks' time a competition, a crowdsourcing for an application for the student experience for students in Wellington. This will be designed by students, no matter whether they be Vic, Massey or Welltech students, whatever, for students, and it will be a way to link the Wellington community providing services to the students of Wellington. We're interested, of course, as an egalitarian country and as a university with egalitarian values around ensuring that disadvantaged peoples can still maintain access to the university in a fees regime period. So we're working very hard at how we secure that intellectual opportunity that's put at risk through disadvantage. We're going to deepen engagement with our alumni and benefactors, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through, and also broaden our influence in the Asia Pacific region. Here are the themes that I mentioned briefly, just to give you some idea of the areas of strength that the university has and areas that we think fit with the opportunities in Wellington. So firstly, advancing better government. Not a surprise, we're in a capital city university. We've got strengths in the School of Government, in our politics, in our international relations, and our international development groups. We want to make that available to the public service in this city, both local and central government, and attempt to do our best to contribute to the advancement of better government. Cultivating creative capital is around the idea of creativity and its importance to communities. That's creativity for creativity's sake and its purest expressions in the creative arts, but all the way through to entrepreneurship in the business school. It includes the research process, which is entirely a creative art. The digital industries are very important to Wellington. It's one of our strengths, and we want to get behind that with our software engineering programs, our computer science programs, our information systems programs, our e-government programs, and develop that further. We're very interested in getting behind this city as a trading nation, as a trading city in a trading nation. A lot of the practitioners that are involved in the art of trade negotiation are in this city. We have people within the university who are involved in international relations, in cultural studies, in the languages of the Asia Pacific, in logistics and supply, all the things that matter, including international law, in developing and fair-minded, effective trade relationships across the region. We're also interested in getting behind the high-value manufacturing sector that this city and its broader region should be, including the hut. This is a differentiating feature of the city. We could do much better in this regard, and we wish to get behind that through our physical sciences, in particular our engineering program. Another feature about Wellington is it's a city where talent wants to live, in the words of Paul O'Callaghan. It is something which has a city which has a beautiful environment. We've got strengths in earth sciences, and we wish to make sure that sustainability, the resilience of our city to future challenges like climate change, like ocean acidification, all the things that can trouble the city and its future are an important part of what our earth sciences do. We're not interested in developing a third medical school. That was an idea that we toyed with, but we do believe that Vic's space in health is to partner with Otago in this city, so work together with Otago University. Our interests are in the broader wellness space, not so much in clinical medicine, and we'll work as close as we can with Otago in the biomedical space, but broaden that out through our psychology program and our environmental science programs. And of course, as a humanities-based university, we're very interested in enhancing national culture, civil society and global citizenship. Those are the enabling strategies. I won't go into those in the interest of just opening this up to questions, but just a couple of quick things. One is that we believe we've got to grow, and this is important for the city. We want to get to about twice the size that we are now over a 15 to 20 year period. World-class public civic universities like Victoria are usually around about 30 to 35,000 students. We're about 15.5 equivalent full-time students, about 20,000 by headcount. So we need to grow with quality over time so that we can have the impact in terms of students graduating into this community, being your future employees, the future employers, the future leaders of this community, as well as growth to create the critical mass for our research engine room that will make a difference to the economy and the way this city and country ticks. So I'll leave it there and just throw it open to questions. That's just a rapid run through to stimulate some thought. Cheers. Thank you. Yeah, so we've appointed a new leader to the School of Government, Brad Jackson, and Brad is very enthusiastic about his discipline as leadership, and he's very interested in leadership in the public sector as well as the commercial sector, but it includes an interest in leadership in NGOs. So part of our focus of our School of Government will be trying to support leadership in the NGO sector. Our approach to enhancing better government is one that's sort of being thrashed out, in part with the School of Government and in part with the State Service at the moment. We're trying to work out why it is that New Zealand is quite odd in its quite polar behaviour between its universities and its public service. In most Western countries, there's a great interchange between the public service and the universities. People moving between the two quite comfortably, yet we don't see much of that in this country. We've got engagement in various points around the university with the public service, and some of our staff work very hard to maintain that, but it would be not true of the entire university, and so a lot of our capability is not being brought to bear in terms of research knowledge for better policy, educational knowledge for better policy. So those are the sort of things that we're interested in. We're interested in internships, in summer scholarships that put students into the public service, including NGOs. We're interested in providing the research support so that better informs policy, whether that be in the sciences or in the humanities or in education. We're We're interested in providing short courses and professional development courses to actually develop people who are already in situ. We're interested in taking people from the public service into the university and vice versa to try and share knowledge and better understand each other. So a lot of program of work that's coming up. At the moment we're mapping our current linkages, which was Ian Rennie's view on a starting point, and they are quite multiple but quite fragmentary as well, and one part of that linkage doesn't really know what the other part is doing. So part of what I've done in terms of restructuring of the university is to appoint our first Deputy Vice-Chancellor engagement, and that person will be entirely focused on linking the university with this community in the wider Asia-Pacific region. And we've put together under that portfolio our comms team, our events team, our professional development team, and our marketing team and our alumni development team. So one person has authority to actually get a set of common messages, to work with the community to identify the opportunities, to work with the university to find out what we can provide and try and link it all together, along with me, of course, which is a big part of my role as well. Thank you. No, there is. So Waterloo is a reasonably good model for Wellington. It's a university that's been on the rise through this process of civic engagement that I mentioned at the start. So the community and Waterloo are very, very close. The businesses in the city and environment of Waterloo are involved in things like developing the learning outcomes for the programs. They're involved in teaching on the programs in Waterloo. The research that Waterloo does is very much driven out of the research needs and research funding of the region, so that there's very close interactions there. So that's a sort of model we envisage in this global civic university idea, where we're, by definition, a civic university is one that's engaged in its community. So then when we came down to think about what does that mean in Wellington, the areas that we picked are those enabling better government, so interacting with our public service, the creative industries bit, the creative capital, which again is a big part of Wellington, the high value manufacturing and the digital technologies areas. So those are probably the four main platforms that we think that we can make a difference, like Waterloo does, to the economy of the region. But we also hasten to add that universities are more than that. They're also about citizenship and hence this idea about national culture and national identity as well. Yes?
Yeah, Grant, your growth over the last 10 years and the growth you've just indicated you aspire to get over the next sort of decade or so is at far greater than what universities in total have achieved over that period and will be achieving. Why is it you've been so successful to get that growth? Because obviously Wellington population is not contributing to it. Yeah. Why do you think you'll be successful in the future?
Yeah, so I think it starts with quality. So the university is an attractive place for people to come because they recognise it as a quality institution. We've recognised that the rate limiting step for us bringing students into Wellington has been hostel accommodation, and so the relatively shrinking footprint of the public service here has been useful for us because we've been able to do these public-private partnerships and put on new beds. So we just put on a new 400 bed on the terrace. Looks like that will fill up this year as well. So that's the sort of demand that's out there for coming to Victoria, and that's based around the quality of the institution, but also around the perception of people outside of Wellington. So I know Wellington people are sometimes down on the city, but certainly I don't feel that way, and many other people around New Zealand don't feel that way. They feel it's a great destination city for students to come to. I think we can do better, but it certainly attracts a lot of people. So that's part of it, just putting on the accommodation and driving a destination campus by having very good quality first year accommodation for students. We also have a plan around a fourth year for all, which is overstated, but what we've found is that the university's had a very traditional model where it's trained people for 3 years, taken a very small percentage of people, about 3% into an honours program, and kicked the rest out as not being good enough to move on to being the next academic. The reality of that, of course, is that people now have many career changes in their life, and that there's a lot more this university could be doing for those who don't make the honours PhD path and wish to be a full-time academic. And that's around taught masters programs. We've got a few running now, like the professional accountancy program. It's very successful. We're going to expand a lot of those. and that should bring us the ability to, even in a flat demographic of Wellington, to get more enrolments over a 4-year period rather than a 3-year period in the university. That's also the way to attract international students, so we need to markedly increase the number of internationals we've got. We need to double it, in fact, over what we've got now. The main currency for those internationals is those taught masters programs where they fly in, do a taught masters in a specialist area that a university's got a reputation for, and then fly home again. And then lastly, our Maori and Pacifica growth is something that we are behind in. I think just in rough demographics, we're about 1,000 young Maori missing in any calendar year that we should have. If you don't have those 1,000 young Maori in your university, that's people that can't go into professions, people that can't go into leadership roles, people that can't go into policy development, and that enshrines disadvantage. So we're going to work very hard at getting that missing 1,000 into the university. So collectively, that over that period of time should give us that level of growth. It is, so yes, I just come back from Vietnam and Thailand and Indonesia, and then prior to that was in Singapore and Malaysia. A very, very strong sense of support for Victoria from the ASEAN region as a whole. The Colombo Plan and that era of students are now in very senior positions. So you've got Victoria graduates working as ministers in governments in that region, or in the ministerial offices, or leading the law firms, leading businesses. For example, in Jakarta we met with a lady who's leading the main business newspaper for Jakarta and wants to advertise Victoria's business school, convert everything into Indonesian for us, and make sure that we're well promoted there. So there's a very strong sense of fondness for Wellington amongst those graduates and for the university. So we do see those regions as being very important to us. They're quite different in terms of a marketing sense. Malaysia is a very mature market, and what's happening there is third-tier British and Australian universities are opening up and teaching in English in a branch of their university within Malaysia, and that makes it difficult for us to recruit out of Malaysia to a full 3-year undergrad degree here in Victoria. Those are why we've got those trends is why we've got to have this academic emphasis, so we can recruit at the master's level, where people, when they're looking around, say, yes, those people are really good on the international stage, and we'll go there for that master's program. But you go over to Vietnam, and there it's a much less mature market, and you can still recruit a full 3-year program into Victoria and into Wellington for that period of time. So we're in a pretty fortunate position at Victoria when we recruit. We do attract very strong fields internationally as well as locally. And I think, again, that comes back to the reputation for quality of the university, partly fueled by the performance-based research fund success, but also the long-term reputation for quality that the university's had. So when we advertise, we get a very good field. The part of the trick of all of that is making sure that those academics are valued in the university, and that there's plenty of incentive around to facilitate a protected scholarly time for good quality research, and that's something that we work very hard on. There's a lot of incentive structures that are probably too detailed to go into here, but we utilise those to make sure that people who come to the university can further their career as academics on the world stage. Our partnership strategies, we're not a member of many networks, formal networks, which I want to fix because that helps with the overall university rankings, but we have numerous academic to academic or school to school relationships around the whole globe with good quality institutions, and those are things that we build on for multidisciplinary research bids into other government funds and into other commercial sectors in our own. So pretty mature strategy around there that seems to be working very well for us in terms of good quality staff.